welcome to Cobblestone Kids Church at Home. Can you tell what I'm decked out ready to do? I'm ready to ride a motorcycle. And when you ride a motorcycle, you gotta make sure you have all the right clothing to protect yourself from the hazards and the traffic on the road. Now the Bible says there are some things we need to put on to protect ourselves, and that's what we're gonna look at today. Now this armor isn't anything you can buy in a store, and the helmet doesn't require a face shield. This armor is God's armor, and God helps us put it on so that we can stand strong against the enemy. We're going to be reading out of the book of Ephesians. Ephesians is a book that Paul wrote to the church at Ephesus to let them know some important truth he wanted to make sure that they would remember. I'm in Ephesians 6, and I'm going to start in verse 10. A final word. Be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on all of God's armor so that you will be able to stand firm against all strategies of the devil. Paul wanted to make sure the church of Ephesus really paid attention to what he was saying. So he didn't just tell them to stand firm once, he says it again. Look at verse 13. Therefore, put on every piece of God's armor so you will be able to resist the enemy in the time of trouble. Then, after the battle, you will still be standing firm. Standing firm. That sounds like a good thing, right? None of us want to be falling over. Standing firm when the enemy is trying to hurt us. We want to stand firm. So now we get to the fun part of this morning's lesson. What do we need to do to stand firm? Here's the first thing we need to put on.
Do you know what Miss Kristen was missing? If you guessed a belt, you were right. A belt might not be the most important piece of armor, but it helps to hold the rest of the armor up. A belt surrounds you, just like you can surround yourself with truth.
Let's look in the book!
Therefore, put on every piece of God's armor so you will be able to resist the enemy in the time of evil. Then, after the battle, you will still be standing firm. Stand your ground, putting on the belt of truth and the body of armor of God's righteousness.
Let's keep going and figure out what else we need to wear. In the book of Proverbs, Solomon, a very wise guy, tells us to guard our hearts because everything flows out of our hearts. So how does God help us protect our hearts? We're going to illustrate. As you can see, Justine and I have on beautiful hearts. Hers just happens to be covered by her apron. By feeding each other spaghetti, we'll see whose heart is guarded in the process. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Here's some spaghetti for you.
Oh, here's some for you.
So in our spaghetti competition, our jobs were to protect our heart, to keep them pure. And I think I did a really bad job. It's all over my lap. How's your heart look?
My heart is protected and clean.
Your heart is protected and clean. Now, of course, spaghetti sauce isn't a bad enemy. Spaghetti's not very dangerous, but we do have to protect our hearts against temptation. So, how do we do that?
Let's look in the book.
Let's look in the book!
Stand your ground, putting on the belt of truth and the body armor of God's righteousness.
So far I fell down when I didn't have a belt, and I made a mess when I didn't have anything protecting my heart. But Justine, you're doing pretty good. The Bible says that when I choose to follow Jesus, I take off my sin, just like I just took off my messy spaghetti clothes and paper heart. The Bible says I take off my sin and I put on His righteousness. Jesus' righteousness is what protects my heart. If you tuned in last week, you'll remember that we talked about the times that worries and fears can bite us. Now, I've written down some different worries and fears in these Post-it notes. I want you to imagine for just a moment that this hallway is the hallway of life. And all the Post-it notes that we've written down our worries on, those are things that tangle us up, that we get stuck in, that tend to bite us. Think about what happens when we walk through life and we allow worries to get stuck on us. This definitely feels like an area that I would appreciate some armor to protect my feet on this journey of life. What do? Let's look in the book.
Let's look in the book!
I'm in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 15. For shoes, put on the peace that comes from the good news so that you will always be fully prepared. So the Bible says there's a certain type of shoe I need to put on. When I have on the peace of God, when His shoes of peace are on me, then what the world has to say, what the world fears, it just doesn't stick to me because I'm covered and protected in my heart, in my mind. All of me is protected by God's peace. Let's review what we've learned so far. I put on the belt of truth to protect myself against the enemy's lies, against his accusations or his temptations. I put on the breastplate of righteousness. I put on God's armor to protect my heart. I exchange my mess for Jesus' righteousness. I put on the shoes of peace so that all of me is guarded. Every thought, every feeling is guarded against worries and fears. But what about when you feel like you're just under attack, that you just have doubts hitting you or lies coming at you? What do you do when you just feel beat up? What does the Bible say we should do? How do we protect ourselves then?